welcome everyone. And Betsy, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this very interesting and first, I think it's the first, what do you call it, debate or first forum on the candidates who are running for the special election in District 24. Why it's so interesting, it is the first time that ranked choice voting will be used. And my only comment to introducing to everybody is that people say, well, it's so complicated, no one's going to understand ranked choice voting. And I say, nothing is too complicated for New Yorkers. They'll get it, they'll understand it, they'll do it. And guess what? There's no worry along those lines. So we're trying tonight to start that process off. And I'm very pleased to be part of it with Michael Nussbaum, my old pal from a long time ago, too long to say. Thank you, Summer, for doing this.
Oh, of course.
I would like to just say again, as Betsy said, this is something that Betsy and I have done for quite a long time, being engaged and getting civic involvement. On behalf of the Queens Daily Eagle, which is the only daily newspaper in Queens, both myself and David and the staff is happy to have this opportunity to partner with the Citizens Union. We're looking forward between now and the elections ending in June for the primaries, and then in the fall, that both the Eagle and the Citizen Union hopefully will be sponsoring many other types of forums like this, that we could provide to the general public a interest in the election this year. And I am pleased because I've heard that there are over 400 candidates running from the top of the ticket to the mayor to the city council, which is extremely exciting for me, who I've been involved in this process since the last century. And I'm not talking about the 19th century. But we are very pleased at the Eagle to be able to do this, and I'll turn it over to our great moderators. David, I think it's your turn.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Betsy. I'm David Brand. I'm editor of the Queens Daily Eagle, as Michael mentioned, the only daily print newspaper, English language print newspaper in Queens. I'm also the host of a show on WBAI 99.5 FM called City Watch, airing live every Sunday at 10 a.m. Been covering this race for, the past couple months, several months now, I guess. And so got to know the candidates well, and it's crunch time now. Early voting began on Saturday, and so far turnout has been low, but hopefully this event and a few more panels that are coming up in the next few days will motivate more people to get to the polls. So thank everyone for being here. Want to introduce my co-moderator, Summer.
Thanks, David. Thanks everyone for being here. My name is Samar Khurshid. I'm the senior reporter for Gotham Gazette. And I'm here to moderate this forum with David. This election is the first ever use of ranked choice voting in New York City primary, in New York City special election. And ranked choice voting is a new system that's being used in specials and primaries for all municipal elections. And in brief, I'm sure all the candidates are aware, it allows voters to cast their votes by preference, choose up to 5 choices. And if no candidate gets 50% in the first choice votes, then the candidate with least amount of votes is eliminated. And then whoever chose that candidate as their first choice, their vote goes to the second choice, and so on until, and unlike most other jurisdictions, New York has a system where only 2 candidates remain and one will be declared the winner. We have 8 candidates running in this race. 6 of them are joining us today. We have, in order of ballot appearance, we have Mumita Ahmed, a progressive organizer, Deepti Sharma, a business owner and food justice advocate, Dilip Nath, a higher education executive and voting rights advocate, Dr. Neeta Jain, a Democratic district leader and a psychologist, Jim Gennaro, a former council member that represented this district, and Soma Syed, a civil rights and defense attorney. The 2 candidates who aren't joining us today are community activist Mujib Rehan and real estate agent Michael O. Brown. And David, why don't you take it away with what we're looking at here, what the district is about, and what the candidates are running for.
Definitely. So we mentioned it's the first test of ranked choice voting in New York City. And so all eyes are on District 24. And like so many New York City council districts, it's an extremely diverse, extremely dynamic district. And ranked choice voting encourages coalition building. So we're going to see what a successful coalition can look like here in District 24. We'll see if candidates can transcend traditional voting blocks in this multicultural, multi-ethnic district. We have a large Orthodox Jewish population in Kew Gardens Hills, including one of the nation's largest communities of Bukharian Jews. There are various South Asian communities in Jamaica and Jamaica Hills, immigrants, first-generation Americans, second-generation Americans from Bangladesh, from India, people who identify as Hindu, as Muslim. There's a predominantly white, a predominantly moderate electorate in neighborhoods like Briarwood, in pockets of Jamaica Estates in Hillcrest. The Pominock houses feature a large number of Black and Latino New Yorkers. And then we have this cool, quirky section in Electchester. It's home to many members of the IBEW labor union who have tended to vote as a bloc in past elections for whomever the union backs. And so, like so many places in New York City, it's a cool, exciting, dynamic, diverse district. And we're happy to have the candidates here. I want to get started with the ground rules, and then we're going to get right into it. So we have 6 candidates participating, several important topics. So in the interest of time, candidates will have about 60 to 90 seconds to respond to questions. We will be asking specific district, council, and policy related questions. So if responses veer too far off topic or become too much of like a generic stump speech, we'll prompt you to address the issue at hand and encourage you to stick to the policies and stick to the specific issues because we have a limited amount of time. Each candidate will have a strict 60 seconds to introduce themselves at the top, and that's going to be in just a moment. Throughout the conversation, throughout the forum, the debate, please avoid crosstalk. If there's too much crosstalk, if it gets a little too hectic, a little too adversarial, we're going to have to mute people, but that's unlikely to happen, hopefully. If a candidate calls you out by name, you can respond. We'll give you a moment. We'll give you 60 seconds to respond after they name you, but we'll let them finish their conversation to avoid much crosstalk. Some questions will be specific to specific candidates, and if time permits, we'll take questions from our audience who will be entering our questions in the Zoom chat box.
Now we can have the candidates introduce themselves. 60 seconds, I want to remind everyone, and we'll go in order of ballot appearance. Ms. Ahmed, you first.
Thank you so much. Thank you for organizing this wonderful event. My name is Momita Ahmed. I'm a progressive leader and community organizer. I co-founded Bangladeshi Americans for Political Progress and the all-women-led Queens Mutual Aid Network during the pandemic. I was also the field and education director and helped pass ranked choice voting with Common Cause. My family immigrated from Bangladesh to Queens when I was 8 years old. And like most of the people in this district, I am a renter, a tenant living in a rent-stabilized apartment. Our campaign is about serving those with the least power, people like my parents who are immigrants who might not have perfect English, but who work hard to make a living, people who would benefit from a strong labor movement, housing justice, and access to free higher education. Our campaign has the most diverse coalition with endorsements from the Jewish Vote, Hispanic American Voter Association, Bangladeshi American Advocacy Group to New York Immigration Coalition, as well as the Working Families Party and New York Communities for Change. We are running a campaign to bring real working class representation to City Council because I believe that it's time for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Sharma.
Thank you again for having us. I'm Deepti Sharma, and I'm running for City Council because I want to build a better Queens. I'm a mom of 2 and a lifelong resident of District 24. I grew up on 155th Street near Queens College and went to 201 right up the block, where my son now attends remotely. I'm a business owner and an activist, and my daily struggles are the same as my neighbors, so I understand why they're awake at night, filled with anxiety about the future. I started my company, Food to Eat, out of college to help restaurants that are immigrant, women, and minority owned to use technology to grow because I understood that many of them often felt overlooked and underserved because most companies don't do that, build technology for them. To me, government means service. I pivoted my business during the pandemic to feed frontline workers and other food insecure communities because I saw a lack of response from our city and knew action was needed. District 24 has never had a mom, it's never had a woman, a person of color, a small business owner ever be elected. And I think the time is now that we do make change for this district.
Thank you. Mr. Nath?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, David, Shamar, and good to see you, Michael, and good friend, Betsy. It's been a long time. My name is Dilip Nath. As Shamar has said, I'm a leader in the higher education and healthcare vertical and also voting rights advocate. Over 30 years ago, I arrived at JFK alone with a small suitcase. And on a short trip on Banwick Expressway led me to my new home in Queens. I'm a father of two. I'm a family man. I deeply care about our community. And that is exactly why I got involved with our local school board, became a president of the PTA, and got elected into the Community Council Education, District 26, and been serving also in the community board. I've been involved with our local prison and our CB. And I'm running for city council because we are facing a serious crisis. COVID-19 has devastated our seniors, destroyed our economy. We needed new leadership as it has been going too long in the wrong direction. And I bring a 21st century pragmatic leadership to take this district forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nath. Dr. Jan?
Hi, good evening once again. I'm Dr. Neeta Jain. Nice to have you all, and thank you so much for putting this debate up for our CD24. As you know that I'm elected Democratic District Leader from Assembly District 25, Part B in Flushing, and I migrated to this country in 1992. From very early, I got engaged in community service through some of the nonprofit organizations. For me, community is always important, and that's why I'm running for the council to put my community first and to deliver for them at City Hall. I have a long history of bringing communities together to get things done, and that's what exactly I'm going to do once I get into the City Council. I will bring the communities together to solve our issues, which really are our concerns in our community. I also have 30 years of experience serving this community. I'm an educator, I'm a civic leader, I'm a community advocate. I also found a nonprofit organization which names International Ahimsa Foundation, which promotes nonviolence and peace, harmony and love, and bring different communities together. Our main work through this organization is for school-going children. We run after-school activities in different international schools to teach them how to live together with diversity. As you know that our district is the most diverse district in New York City, especially in Queens.
Thank you, Dr. Jane. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I have to give up.
I wanted to know, first of all, that how much time we have.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
60 seconds for the intros.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Janaro, 6 seconds. Sorry. Yeah, we will give you a little bit of leeway, but yeah,
Go ahead,
I may have to cut people off.
Go ahead.
Mr. Gennaro?
Thank you. Yes. My name is Jim Gennaro. I'd like to thank the organizers. Betsy, long time since I've seen you. It's very good to see you. I've lived in this district since 1983, raised my family here. I joined the local community. I was a president of my civic, and then I was a member of Board 8, the local community board. I worked for the council for many years, and then I went on to be elected to the council in 2001, served from 2002 to 2013. I was known for my work on environmental issues. I passed 50 major environmental laws that transform the city. And once my greenhouse policies are fully in effect, which I hope to do, that will be a $20 billion market and 140,000 green jobs by 2030. That's a real big deal, and I really want to get that done. On the home front, I'm the only candidate who has worked with every single constituency in this neighborhood and knows their special needs, and I'm offering myself as a choice for people. And I thank you for having this forum tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Gennaro. And finally, Ms. Syed.
Good evening. Thank you so much for organizing this forum tonight. I am an immigrant. I'm a woman of color. I'm also an attorney who has been practicing in this community for more than 16 years, helping immigrants, working class communities, and people who have issues with landlord-tenant issues, immigration, and business issues. I have real life experience living through all my different realities. I know what it's like to struggle. I know what the issues are. I'm the only person who has the best leadership to lead this district in the 21st century. We have to look forward to the future, not the past. And I have the experience. And I look forward to representing this district with diverse multitude of ideas, vision, and needs. And I will do that when I get to City Council.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, we have met our candidates, so let's get into the questions. So again, just a reminder, we have 6 candidates, several important topics. So in the interest of time, candidates will have 60 to 90 seconds to respond to questions, and we'll give you prompts just as Summer did earlier. We'll be asking specific district, council, and policy related questions. So if responses veer too far off topic, we'll prompt you to address the issue at hand. And again, if a candidate is named, they will have the opportunity to respond. Let's get right into it with our first question. So we will have a new jail set to rise on the doorstep of the district. It's part of the city's plan to build a new jail in each borough, but Staten Island, and to close Rikers Island. That plan is tangled in budget gaps right now, or budget deficits, and facing various lawsuits. So first question, and we're going to go in reverse order of the previous responses to Soma Syed. Do you agree with closing Rikers? And do you support building new jails, including the facility in Kew Gardens? And how will you pursue that position and that perspective in the council?
Firstly, I don't support closing Rikers Island. I think putting jail in every borough of New York City. What we need to do is to modernize Rikers Island to make sure that we meet the human rights needs, that the people who are going to be there are there, they have all the facilities that they need. The solution is not to spread out mini jails all over New York City. The solution is to fix, reinvest in Rikers Island, and that should be the solution.
Thank you. Okay, same question, Jim Gennaro. Do you agree with closing Rikers? And did you support building new jails, including the facility in Kew Gardens?
Yeah, let me flip that question around. I think the report that was put out made a fairly compelling case for closing Rikers. However, the other side of that is, what does one do? And that's where the de Blasio administration fell down. So unless you can figure out a way to create a post-Rikers world, then it's not really prudent to close Rikers. I support Community Board 8 that voted overwhelmingly to oppose the building of the jail right on the doorstep of Briarwood. That would vaporize hundreds of millions of dollars in property values, which is quite unfair to people. And that's my answer.
So to follow up on that, you said you could support closing Rikers, but not building the jail in Kew Gardens. So what do you think it would take to get to?
I said what I said was the report made a compelling case, but I think Soma also makes a good point that it shouldn't be out of the question if we can't find a fair post-Rikers world, and where we don't vaporize hundreds of millions of dollars in property values, then perhaps the best alternative would be to keep Rikers and make the investment like Soma says. Now, looking at the budget, it's $5.25 billion. The gap based on the preliminary budget that was announced last week. And so with the crisis budget that we have to make, this whole discussion about closing Rikers could theoretically become academic, but I agree with Soma that massive investment would have to be made in order to make it the humane facility that it needs to be.
Thank you. And let's go to Dr. Nita Jane. Did you support closing Rikers and building the new jail in Kew Gardens? And talk about how you would pursue that in the council.
All right. So first of all, yes, I was in favor of closing Rikers Island because it was not convenient for the families whose members were there. And when they really need right away attention from the families, it was very difficult for them to approach. So that's the reason our city council all voted for closing this Rikers Island. But the second part of that you, of course, I'm hearing a lot of concerns from our constituents and neighbors while we go out and talk to the voters. And this is their main concern, that why you are putting it and like, what can we do about it? So my concern is as a psychologist, as a mental health professional, I would definitely, I can see that the fear of, fear developing in peoples and residents who are living in that area. So we should find out some non-residential area to build this. And what I'm going to do when I get into the council. We cannot put a jail right in the middle of residential areas. It's not safe, and it's not psychologically, positive and fitted.
Even though there was previously a jail in that area?
I know, but people were not that much aware. Now everybody is so much aware. Everybody is looking for those things, and everybody is reading. And like we are now more tech people. People are more aware of their surroundings and whatever is going on. And as you say that, David, like in Brooklyn, we have two jails from for a long time. It's not something new came up. So we have to put these jails somewhere, right? But I'm definitely not in agreement in putting jail right in the middle of residential area. We definitely have
Thank
to
you.
find some skirt where we can make this.
Thank you. And let's go to Dilip Nath. Did you support closing Rikers and building the jail in Kew Gardens?
So I am proud to say that as the member of the community board, I voted with my colleague, not supporting building an additional jail in Kew Garden Hill. And conceptually, I support the closing of the Rikers Island. But I think COVID had changed my thinking on this thing, because I don't think it is time to invest money building a new jail. We have to invest on a small business. We have to make sure we get back on our feet. And other thing, we really need to do reform our criminal justice that protect the middle class family, not the violent criminal. So I think this whole thing needs to be relooked, revisit. But right at this moment, I am not in favor of building any jail in anywhere right now. But that's not the investment should be.
Thank you. Deepti Sharma, talk to us about your perspective. Would you support closing Rikers Island, building the new jail in Kew Gardens?
Yeah, I think the discussion shouldn't be about new jails or no new jails. I think we need to focus on incarceration versus rehabilitation. By approaching Rikers through that problem, we can actually fix what's the underlying issues, and we'll be able to create and implement a stronger plan that will close Rikers and not endanger our district and not create more jails. Because we know what's happening in Rikers. We already have seen how people have been affected by it. And so I was, in favor of closing it, but it's not going to happen overnight. And I think that by closing a jail to just create new jails doesn't make sense either. So we need to look at what's happening there. And again, think about rehabilitation and providing, the things that our inmates actually need for, furthering themselves back into society.
Thank you. And Mahmoud Ahmed, do you support closing Rikers Island? Do you support building the new jail in Kew Gardens? And how would you pursue that perspective, that proposal in the council?
Yeah, David, I'm just going to quote you real quick. You wrote an article about how our community boards, white people are overrepresented on every board, and men outnumber women at a significant rate on several boards. And Latinx residents are underrepresented, sometimes by a huge margin. So we need a new vote in the community board. We need to close Rikers Island and also reject the so-called community jails. Closing one jail and opening 4 more will not end mass incarceration and make sure that our neighbors can live with dignity. It will only lead to the continued criminalization of Black and brown people. We need to say loudly and clearly, no new jails. Close Rikers as soon as possible. And in council, I would make sure that the land is used as a hub for renewable energy to bring our city closer to a clean energy future. That's something Costa Constantinides, when I was working for him as political director, we talked about constantly to constituents. And we can't wait on the climate crisis, okay? And many people in Rikers don't even need to be there. The best way to close it is decarceration and getting people the help they need instead of locking them behind bars during a pandemic.
I want to ask you a follow-up question to that. So you mentioned support closing Rikers, no new jails, no new Kew Gardens jail. So where would people who are accused of violent felonies or violent crimes be housed?
I support decarceration. I support rehabilitation, right? Right now, what we have is the situation where too many people are in jail. Too many people who shouldn't be there that are in jail. And if we didn't have that, then of course there'd be space for violent criminals. So the first thing we need to do immediately right now is decarcerate, make sure people who shouldn't be there are out of there before we have this conversation about, where would we house violent criminals? The reason why, if we don't have enough space or whatever that is cited, is because there's people in there that shouldn't be in there. They're not criminals. They were, so this is why I supported ending cash bail and supported Tiffany Caban when she ran for district attorney.
I want to just to continue on that line, and then we're going to move on to the next question. But so let's stick to specifically the people who most people could agree need to be probably removed because of violent offenses. Where should those people be detained?
As I mentioned, for me, this is about making sure that our communities that have been harmed by policies of punishing poor working class people, that those harms are undone. And the only way to do that is by closing jails, right? Closing Rikers and re-examining the way we handle criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, like this, I think what you're saying is you're sort of feeding into this idea that if we close the jails, there won't be any space for violent criminals. And that's just not true.
Well, but that's kind of what I'm asking. Is there a specific location that exists right now where you would that you would be comfortable detaining someone or housing someone who is accused of a violent crime? Take away all the people of low-level crimes, non-violent crimes, maybe people on supervised release. What about the people who are charged with at sometimes very disturbing crimes?
There are facilities, right? There are facilities upstate. There are facilities elsewhere. Right now, I can't think of the exact address, but they do exist, okay? But we're talking about community jails. We're talking about an area in New York City where
Did we lose her?
I think we might have lost her. We can maybe return to that. We've talked about that. Let's go to Summer with the next question.
Let's move on. The question about the jails, it raises a larger question of land use issues. As a city council member, that's one of the most important roles you play is in voting on land use. And, one of the things that the city council has traditionally done is given the local city council member a veto, defer to their vote on a specific land use issue. It could be a development, as you might have seen recently with the Sunset Park rezoning. Do you think, which was supported by other council members from outside the districts because they thought it was good for the city, do you think a council member should be able to veto a project in their district, even if it's supported by a majority of the council? Would you support would you try to override another city council member's veto if you thought it was in the interest of the city? Let's start with Mr. Gennaro. We're gonna mix it up a little bit. Everyone gets a different stuff.
Yeah, sure. Having been on the council for a long time, I can recall, many instances of council members who vehemently oppose some kind of, facility or, some kind of zoning that was voted on by the rest of the council. And first one that jumps to mind is when they wanted to do the new, 91st Street transfer station in Jessica Lappin's district. I mean, she was all over the place trying to make sure that that didn't happen, and the council made it happen anyway because it was the right thing to do. And so it was not my experience on the council that, local members had any kind of veto. Of course, if I had a case to make, I would make it to my colleagues and I would try to say, this is really not the best way to go. I know the community best. I try to make my best case, but at the end of the day, the reason why there's 51 votes on the council is that sometimes it just doesn't go your way. So it was not my experience, and that's not a power that I think I or anyone on the council should have. Sometimes things have to happen, and that's just the way the council, in my understanding, has kind of always been structured. Sometimes we give consideration, in like marginal things, but if something really has to happen, it happens.
What would be, let's say, what's the theoretical? What's something you would oppose if the city council tried to force you to do something in your district that you didn't want? Let's
Yeah,
say,
right now in Briarwood, right on Queens Boulevard, talking about a zoning matter, I worked really hard to get a stretch of, Queens Boulevard zoned to mixed use development that would bring in more investment, to the community and also increase local property values. And that is where the de Blasio administration, without, proper consultation, with the district, has proposed a 175 men's, barrack type shelter. And according to the, Department of Homeless Services, with whom I had a Zoom call, they were the first to say that, many of the men in the facility, in this barrack style facility, will be drug addicted, will be mentally ill. And this is right across the street from a playground and a school and a library. It's the worst possible place for such a facility. And so that is something that, God willing, I get elected, I would, try to make common sense prevail, because, you can't have 175 bed barracks.
we want to focus on homelessness
Sure.
later on this forum. So
Sure. Okay. I just wanted to, you asked for an example, so I tried to provide one.
I appreciate it. So that'll be good when we will sort of circle back to homelessness.
Sure.
Move on to
Sure.
Ms. Sharma. Do you think a council member should hold a veto? Would you veto? Would you override another city council member's?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, as a city council member, our job is to represent our community, right? Is to make sure that we're representing them well and we're listening to them. And I believe that the veto is critical in order to ensure that our district isn't taken advantage of. And it's why, one of the most important things that we're going to do is have community participation, right? Have members of the community as a part of our board. And we want to create these task forces and advisory councils as the first thing we do, because who better than the people of this district to help us make the decisions on what is needed for this district? For too long, we've had city council members making decisions, which is great because we're supposed to be representative of them, but also bring your community in and let them have a seat at the table, not just in a town hall, but let them be a part of this, like the process of what's going on and what needs to be implemented for their communities, because they're the ones that are contributing to the local economy. They're the ones that are living there on a daily basis, and they're the ones that are going to be affected by any new development or by anything that happens in that district, right? So it's essential to have them as a part of the process. And as someone who is also a part of this district, I think it's important to have that, part of the decision-making process in general.
How would that differ than the existing community board?
Well, again, I mean, it goes back to making a decision on how representative it is of the district, right? I don't think that the community boards currently have a process in where they're looking at the diversity of how many Black and brown people are on there, how many renters are on there, how many homeowners are on there. That's a huge part of that. I mean, this district has a huge portion of people that are renters as opposed to just homeowners. And if that community board is not representative of that, well, it's not representative of the district. Diversity and inclusion has been a huge part of who I am as an individual in my work. And it's a huge part of who I am as, I run this, as I run our campaign. It's not about just being a South Asian candidate. It's about being all of my labels. It's about being a woman. It's about being a mom. It's about being a person of color. And it's about being a small business owner. Do we have all of these things representative on our task forces or our community boards? No. So as a part of what I would like to do is, obviously work alongside the community boards, but create separate task force for different kinds of issues that are, again, diverse. Diversity is not just about race, gender, ethnicity. It's about more than that. It's about the experiences that we bring to the table. And having been a small business owner who's represented hundreds of others, that's also something that's essential to me.
Thank you so much. Mr. Nath, what do you think about how you would approach land use issues and local vetoes?
So first and foremost, we need to be transparency. And the second most important thing is our taxpayer. They need to be respected. They need to get respect from the city hall. Oftentimes, our community completely ignore, and city council do things behind the scene with real estate developer and other special interest. That needs to stop. Yes, I am all for veto, but before we do that, there has to be a task force and also hearing. Community needs to hear the pros and cons, why such a thing would be beneficial for the community. Look, we all are here for the good thing for our children, for our neighbor, for our community. And if it's a good, why there would be secret? Why we should make a deal behind the closed door?
Well, rezoning processes go through years and years and years of all of that, open hearings and land use reviews, environmental reviews. Do you think it's appropriate for a council member to, at the last moment shut it down because they don't agree with it, even after it's gone through all of that?
So yes, community board, yeah, the process that goes to the community board, that's how it should be. Unfortunately, a lot of the community board, they are not representative of the community. If you look at the, most of the community board, they are, one segment of the group are dominating the entire board. Look, in my own board, I have applied 3 times and my former councilman rejected it. And when there was virtually, one South Asian. So you can understand, imagine that.
I think there seems to be agreement here that it's an issue of community board diversity. Ms. Syed, what do you think?
There's a tendency for council members to vote along with each other on each other's projects. But like you said, land rezoning, land use development, the issue doesn't happen overnight. It takes years. The problem is the community is kept out in the dark from the very beginning. The community has all the information. It goes back to transparency. It goes back to diversifying the community members of the community board. It goes back to that. If we can start from the beginning, give all the information to our members, residents of the particular district who will ultimately be affected, I think then a council member who comes in is not in a position to just veto it from just then. The information is there from early on. So that's what we need to do. We need to change the approach and the way the communication is done, the way information is shared, and the way its community it has been involved in the last process when it should be the reverse. And that's where the real issue is. And we need to change it. And that's the only way we'll really develop land use that is equitable, that is fair, and that is accessible to every person of various means.
So does that mean, would you override another council member's opposition if it meant it was better for the city or the borough as a whole?
I have to see what that project is. I have to see what that does to the resident citizens of New York City. It's hard for me to speak hypothetically without knowing the particular fact.
Right, right.
I'm-
Dr. Jen, we'll get through this and, you'll have a chance to say add some story. Dr. Jen, what do you think?
So my take is on this issue is that we definitely have to have all the stakeholders who are getting affected with this bill or proposed bill in city council, because not every district is same, not every district the population is same, not ethnicity is same, right? So we definitely, once we get into the council, I'm representing my own district. I should know my district better than anybody else, right? But when you propose a bill, when you propose a resolution in city council, then of course everybody has to vote on it, right? Because I worked on a couple of other, process in city hall, so I know how it works. But if majority of council members are agreeing with based on the facts you present to them, right? So I think that with the experience of their candidacy and everything comes together. Your constituents, your community board, other council members' experience and from their districts. So we have to put everything together as a holistic approach, and we definitely have to put our constituents first than anybody else. So, if there's any way that we definitely need to veto something, then I would go for it. But definitely, I want to make sure that our community board, our constituents are all involved in this process.
I was just wondering if I could make a point to
Well,
clarify something that might be helpful.
We have a lot. We move quickly. We have a lot of important questions we want to address. You'll have some time at the end. Ms. Ahmed, quickly, if you could.
Yeah, so as everybody else said, it's about representation on community boards. And I brought that up by quoting David directly. Land use process needs to be led by the community, and including housing activists and renters like me. The land use decision that our city makes to build new developments and displace working class communities are approved by community boards that don't have working class renters facing harassment from bad landlords. The renters in the community who are months behind on their rent are facing eviction. And the working class people on the front lines who face housing insecurity need to have a stake in the land use process. So I support Councilmember Jamani Williams's legislation to include a racial impact study with every new development. And until that's passed, I'm against any new developments.
Understood. Mr. Gennaro, 30 seconds to quickly make your point.
Yeah, I think for the people watching this, I think there's something to understand that there are two very different things. There's citing a facility that a local member may not want, and then there's doing a rezoning. And ordinarily, the land use chair works very closely with the local member, and so there's a very different kind of situation. So people should know that a zoning, like the council member really kind of like is in the driver's seat. And with, so there's that, so that's an important distinction about zoning versus citing a facility that is not desirable.
I appreciate it. Thank you for the clarification. Now we're going to quickly move on to our next issue. As a city council member, newly elected, one of the first things you're going to tackle is the city budget. The push to cut funding from the NYPD it's still going on from last year. People want to cut anywhere from $1 to $3 billion from the police and invest it in the community. Would you support cutting funds from policing and investing it in, and what would you invest those funds in? I'll let Ms. Syed go first.
Firstly, I want to say that I am not in favor of defunding the police, and it's a rhetoric that is reckless. And look at the rise in crimes. There was a $1 billion taken from the NYPD budget. Murders, crimes, home invasion, car invasions. What's happening to our communities? It's not good for our community. Yes, there are problems with certain members of the NYPD. We need to have police accountability and reforms to make sure those who are the bad actors, they are held accountable. And at the same time, we need to make sure that our streets are safer, our streets are cleaner, and people feel safe to go to work, to go to school, and they don't have to look behind what's happening. We don't want to go back to the 80s and the early 90s when I was told as a young child, keep your back to your chest or don't fall asleep in the subway.
Does that mean, very briefly, does that mean you would increase funding to the police? And I want to keep the answers brief right now. We're running out of time.
There's a $6 billion budget. The police needs its resources, but I have to look at the entire budget to see and prioritize before I commit to additional funding. We have a good budget right now.
Thank you. Ms. Sharma, 60 seconds so we can get to other issues as well.
Okay, we need to shift the budget. I mean, there's no question about it. We need to take a look at how we're putting, reinvesting within our communities. A simple, anecdote. I met a Queens College student who lives in this district, and he called 911 because of the fact that he was having a panic attack. And instead of having someone help him, what happened? They came and handcuffed him. So there wasn't someone there to help him. We need to shift the budget and making sure that not all 911 calls are being, answered by the NYPD. We need to make sure that we're investing in social services, mental health services, and providing for our communities, rehabilitating our communities. Our community has lost so much funding for the enrichment programs that it has. And that's what we need to do. We need to give community centers and put them back into our communities for our seniors, for our children, not constantly, if you want to look at their budget, look at overtime. Instead of sending, 3 people for a block party, they're sending 30. So we need to look at what parts of the budget are bloated and make sure that public safety is obviously a priority, but making sure that we are investing in our communities. In a time of a deficit, we're in a almost $9 billion deficit, and we're going to talk about the fact that we have no services for our community. Where does that money come from? By reinvesting and taking a shift around with where the budget is bloated. So I think that's really essential for me as a city council member if I get there.
Ms. Ahmed?
Yeah, we have to reimagine public safety, and that means reallocating the funds elsewhere. Okay, even today when I was at your college, I watched 3 young college students get stop and frisked because they had tinted windows. We need to reinvest that money into our communities who have experienced disinvestment for years, from housing to education. And we need to stop buying military style weaponry, because that's where that money is being used, and overseas headquarters. And we need to remove NYPD from school, from transit systems, homeless and mental health facilities, and we need to cut their overtime. 20 police cars shouldn't show up over a traffic ticket. Public relations and surveillance technology is unnecessary, because that was used to, for example, surveil a large swath of the Muslim population and Muslim student associations at universities. That's what's reckless. And so we do need to reimagine and rethink this NYPD budget.
Mr. Nath, what do you think? Would you vote to cut the funds to the NYPD?
So first of all, I do not, support the defunding the police, that movement, for the following reason. Words matter. I think defunding the police, it does not have the face value that it really meant, right? Yes, we need to transform the police department. There has been a systemic racism that needs to change. But right now is not a time to defund the police. We need more police to protect the middle class family. We need to have a real criminal justice reform so that violent criminals doesn't walk around. But today we spend about $400 million on overtime, unnecessary overtime. Think about this: when police officer goes into the court just for a hearing, sitting there hours and hours, and travel time and sitting at the court. We could do some of those using tools and technology. As your council member, I would be advocating to take those and invest in technology and build a platform so that we can utilize their valuable time in much more efficiently and save those money. that are
You,
being
you
wasted.
said you said the city needs more police. How many more police do you think the city needs?
Well, I don't know exactly how many more police we need, but as long as I've been here, I see South Asian and the New American and other Jewish community are being targeted for the hate crime. And by having a less police is not going to help our community.
Okay. Dr. Jan?
Yes, very good and important question. So I would say that I would rather reform the police, and I would definitely cut overtime and have more number of cops to work instead of doing double duties, because double duties psychologically affect your performance, and then and it also affect your judgment. So I would rather reform the police, give them more training, hold them accountable, and give them mental health crisis intervention training, which is the most important part of the NYPD, which we need at this point. As what Deepti said, as what other speaker said in the previous, and that's the whole thing, because they are not trained in mental health. So a lot of time their judgments are not right, and the right people get into the wrong hands. So that I would do as a city council.
And finally, Mr. Gennaro?
Yes, I do not support any further defunding of the police regarding the budget hit that they took last year with the budget gap that it is now. I don't think any of that money is going to come back, but I certainly would not support, cutting them any more because of the rise in crime, because of what some of my fellow what are you folks? You're my
Fellow candidates.
candidates. That's the word. Thank you. And so I think people have said that very eloquently that crime is going up. We can't afford to have that happen. And so would not be for further defunding the police. However, with the third phase of the body camera program in 2019 having fully gone into effect, I think that's a great step forward. And I am also in favor of funding, which I did last time, cameras that help police solve violent crimes. I think that's a very important tool and something I will continue through my own discretionary funds.
David?
Great. So let's stick with you, Mr. Gennaro. And in 30 seconds, what are some specific initiatives or items, and you can name one or two, that you would prioritize for the district in the budget? And you just went from unmute to mute.
I think the first thing, as I look at the preliminary budget, is that the mayor wants to balance the budget on the backs of education funding, and I think all the candidates would agree that is not the way to go. We can't, and I think I would use my budget expertise, having been through 12 budgets as a councilman, 13 other budgets as a council staff member working for the speaker, with my relationship with the speaker and with the mayor and with the chair of the finance committee, to make sure, because it's really all about the budget. Like we are in a crisis now.
Thank you. We got to keep some of these short, and we're going to go to Nita Jane. Make a pitch. What are you going to fund in the? What are you going to fund?
My two top priorities are school and safety, and mental health and healthcare. Three, sorry, not two.
Okay. Do you want to give what's a specific initiative in the district that you would fund that has to do with any of those?
As you know, during this pandemic, I have seen, and a lot of people contacted me, and I'm working with the school system very closely, that definitely we have to provide devices to our school kids and the teachers also, and the safety kits. They still do not have fully PPEs and safety measures in their schools, and they are afraid of sending their children. And every day we hear from one school to the other school that, okay, this class is shut down. And
Thank you.
Shut down.
We're gonna go to Dylan Nath. Same question. What's something you would definitely look to fund in the district?
So my first priority will be school. We failed during the COVID. We're failing our children alone. When we send them back home in April, up until now, we have not been able to provide education. We're failing a future generation. So my definitely would building an infrastructure and a platform where we can deliver the curriculum online and also make broadband absolutely free for the low-income people. And the secondly, I'll advocating for telehealth and telemedicine so that our senior can be seen regularly, sitting at home, so they don't have to be afraid of COVID or other pandemic. And that,
Thank you.
this is something I would advocate. Yes.
Thank you. Mamita Ahmed, what would you give us a pitch? What would you fund in the district?
Well, people and not the police. More funding for the Palmanock houses, NYCHA, right to counsel for renters who are facing eviction, language translation services for immigrants. So many things. I can keep going.
Well, thank you. Thanks for keeping it short. Let's go to Deepti Sharma. What would you look to fund in the district in the next budget?
I think the most important thing is, reinvesting in our communities. And so community centers that have lost so much of their budget, and then community centers that provide more than just homework help, right? That's the only thing that they've kind of come down to, making sure that there's more enrichment in the part of these community centers. So like gymnastics, taekwondo, all these things that the arts that people forget about are really, really important and are such a huge part of the bigger issues of systemic racism that we talk about when it comes to policing. The next thing is, like, if someone's going to be elected on February 2nd, we need to make sure that we're a COVID-free New York. We need to make vaccinations more we need to make vaccinations more accessible. We also need to make sure that we have safe working environments with PPE and testing.
Thank you. And Soma Syed, what would you seek to fund in the next budget in 30 seconds?
Definitely, we need to create more jobs and employment. That means investing in more small business reliefs and assistance, and also creating environment for people who don't have jobs for vocational training or trade school. Secondly, we need to invest in our children, after school programs, close the digital divide, and provide more funds for language accessibility. And then making sure, like Deepti said, which I agree, we need to make sure all our people are vaccinated. And the elderly, the disabled, and people who are immune compromised don't have to go to clinics and hospitals to get vaccinated. Trucks should be coming to them and get them vaccinated. So we need to make our city COVID-free.
Thank you. All right, we're going to shift topics a little bit here. There are two issues that have emerged in this race that deal with identity, cultural representation, geopolitics, and even claims of discrimination. And so we're going to address those here. We're going to give each candidate a chance to respond. First question is going to go to you, Mamita Ahmed. A tweet you made in 2015 emerged last week, fueling accusations of anti-Semitism. Another tweet from last year referenced the Wall Street Bull with the message, "Where my Israelites at?" Constituents, particularly among the Jewish community, have criticized your support for boycott, sanction, and divest movement, for those tweets. These are two big topics, so we want to give you about 90 seconds to 2 minutes to explain, do you support BDS and why, and to talk about your tweet response to the message calling for a boycott of Israel.
So 6 years ago, someone tweeted an upsetting image at me containing what I now clearly recognize as an anti-Semitic trope. For that, I'm sorry. I didn't create the image, so it's inaccurate to call me an anti-Semite over it. I didn't share or promote the image, and I agree that it is upsetting. I replied to the tweet saying that my heart beat for Palestinian children, because it does. My heart beats for Palestinian children and children everywhere. Palestinian, Israeli, and right here in District 24, where 1 out of 14 children are homeless. Anti-Semitism is wrong. It is something that I'm committed to fighting against, which is why I have the support of the Jewish vote. So to my Jewish cousins, I know that when they come for you, they come for me too. We saw that during Trump's presidency. And I will show up for you every time you are under attack, just as for me and my Muslim community. And in terms of, I support the two-state solution. And I support people's right to boycott, because in my district, there are differences of opinions when it comes to that. So I want to be open to, I want to make sure that I protect people's First Amendment right to boycott.
Thank you for that response. The next question will be for Soma Syed. You applied for the endorsement of the Democratic Socialists of America, New York City chapter, and wrote in your application that you support boycott, divest, and sanction movement, or boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel. You have since backtracked and criticized the DSA. So do you support BDS?
I don't support BDS. And I like to make it clear, like many first-time candidates, I speak to many groups and I like to get support. I also like to make it clear that I didn't even make it through the screening process. And as time went by, I realized BDS was not the right solution. BDS was not the right thing to do. It's not okay to single out a country, a group of people who have been persecuted for centuries. The way to do it is to have dialogues, is to bring our Jewish cousins, sisters, brothers to the table and create a two-state solution. So I support two-state solution, and I am not for BDS.
Thank you. Follow-up question to that. If the Jewish Community Relations Council sponsored a trip to Israel, would you attend the trip?
I have a policy that as a elected official of New York City, I will not take a trip to any country. I would go to Israel, go to a trip on my own funds, or if New York City government pays for it. And that goes for every country who's going to invite me, whether it's our cousin country, England, or whether it's India or another country. I will only do it on my own funds and the funds of our government if it wants to send me there. But yes, I will go there, but with my own funds.
Thank you. And let's go to each candidate to find out where you stand on that. We'll go back to you, Mamita Ahmed. Would you go on the trip sponsored by the Jewish Community Relations Council?
Look, at the end of the day, I am not going to go to a trip that is that's furthering or any sort of propaganda or any sort of rhetoric, right, coming from government that is expanding settlements in Palestinian lands, for example. So I think that at the end of the day, I would have to. I don't even know why we go, the trip is funded, but I understand the importance of the relationships between Israel and, the Jewish community here in the city. So I would listen to them, and I would take counsel from the organization, the Jewish Vote, who have endorsed me before I say yes or no to this question.
Thank you. And same question to Aditi Sharma. Would you attend the trip sponsored by the Jewish Community Relations Council?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Dilip Nath, would you attend that trip?
Absolutely. Jewish community are an integral part of our community, and I would go any day. Keeping them outside, boycotting them is not a solution. They need to be part of the solution.
Okay. And Dr. Nita Jain, would you accompany Jewish Community Relations Council on the trip?
Of course, just for you to know that I work very closely with JCRC and AJC, and India and Israel has very good relationship. And more than that, my first mentor in this country as a psychologist was Dr. Judith Sharier, who I met at LIJ when I started my first so-called volunteer job. And she moved back to Israel after 45 years in this country. And every time I meet Michael and anybody from JCRC and AJC, Nissim, and even, Rabbi Daniel, I tell them, listen, I want to go with you guys and find her and meet her. And that is my first desire.
Thank you. And Mr. Gennaro, would you accompany JCRC on that trip?
Yes, I went with Mike Miller and the JCRC back in 2002 during the height of the Intifada, when many delegations were canceling their trips because it was quite dangerous to go. I was happy and proud to go, and certainly would do so again.
Thank you. And I went to you last there because I want to follow up with a second question to you. So you skipped 2 candidate forums hosted by South Asian organizations, fueling criticism that you are not interested in earning the support of South Asian constituents. Other people have said that you did little to support South Asian communities during your first 3 terms in office. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, I think that's baloney. I really worked hard with the South Asian community. I was known as the Bangladeshi councilman. That was not the moniker I gave myself. I appointed the first Bangladeshi woman to community board aid. I celebrated South Asian and Bangladeshi culture every year at City Hall. Every council member gets one event that they can do per year at City Hall with the speaker, with the major community leaders. I did that every year for 12 years. And I'm very proud of my outreach, my great relationship with the South Asian community. And I think folks would be very surprised at the amount of the South Asian vote that I carry in this special election, because it is going to be very significant because I have very strong support there.
Thank you. Well, let's move on to another topic. We have about 10 or 15 minutes left, I think, and then we could wrap up. And I thank everyone for continuing to participate. I know we're going a little after 8, but it's great conversation, great forum we're having. Homelessness is one of the greatest crises facing our city and has been for many years. But when candidates discuss homelessness, they often default to responses about shelter siting and rejecting shelters in the district. That's a popular stance among constituents, and it came up earlier, the planned shelter for Briarwood. But beyond rejecting shelters, what are 1 or 2 policies that you support that would actually address the current homelessness crisis and get families and individuals who are in shelters or who are in unstable housing into permanent, affordable housing? And let's start with you, Mr. Nath.
So look, first and foremost, there has been a rise in the homelessness in our district, and that's across the city. But if you look at Queens is housing more homeless shelter than any other borough. It's not right, it's not fair. Now, at the same time, we are not building the same affordable housing that like every other borough. Queens is getting less of its fair share. I think to solve this problem is not building another shelter. We cannot just move these people from one shelter to the next. We need to come up with a permanent solution. Come up with a pathway where we can build a true affordable housing so that we can get them into a real home, not a shelter.
In just like 10 seconds, because we have to move on, but do you have what would you support for building affordable housing? Is there a specific thing that you would do?
Well, we need to bring a public-private partnership.
Mm-hmm.
But in that partnership, we need to make sure that the term that we use, affordable, is not the term that the median that we take it from Manhattan. That
right, truly affordable, I guess. So thank you. Let's go to Deepti Sharma. Is there 1 or 2 specific policies that you would support to address homelessness?
Yeah, I mean, I think when addressing homelessness specifically to this district, I think the most important thing to think about is that the residents have been left out of the decision. And I think that's what's been most bothersome for this district specifically. I think we need to make sure that we're bringing them, again, like what I've said before, bringing them to the table, making sure that we understand why the Department of Homeless Services actually thinks this is the best place. Looking at the data, does this area actually have specific reasons why it's the best, right? Are there jobs available? Are there training services? Are there mental health services? What is it about this area that's going to be the best for the people that will be living in the homeless shelter? Because at the end of the day, the shelter is not just a place to provide for housing, but also services to rehabilitate them so that we can bring them back into society. So whether that's job training, mental health services, and helping with whatever addictions that they may be facing. Those are the things that are most important for me to think about when it comes to shelters, besides just talking to community members.
Thank you. Let's go to Mamita Ahmed. What are 1 or 2 policies that you would support that actually address homelessness?
For starters,
I think she froze again, so we can go revisit with her. And let's go to Dr. Nita Jain.
Sorry, Wait, what? Hello?
You're froze for a second, so we're going to go to Dr. Jane, and then we'll come back to you to respond to that question.
So as we all saying that, and I'm on the same page, that we need more affordable houses instead of shelters, because shelters are not the solution. We need permanent houses for these people. And as we all know that 1 out of 14 students are homeless in our district specifically. So we need more affordable permanent housing for them, not the shelters. And we have to make sure that we have a program which can prevent them from evictions also. And so for that, we also need more job trainings. So we can create more jobs. We can give them more apprentice training to these folks who are homeless, so they can get on their feet and they can afford their houses. And the other thing, that mental health definitely is very important part of this whole system. And we should provide them mental health counseling so they can, cope with these kind of crises and settle down in their life.
Thank you. And let's go back to Mamita Ahmed.
So as I was saying, my top priority isn't to do a photo op during a pandemic without wearing a mask while opposing a homeless shelter. My top priority as a renter living in a rent stabilized apartment, like most people in this district, is housing justice for all. Something that housing justice advocates always say is that shelters are temporary. So I would speak with DHS about concerns raised by members of the community. I would engage advocacy groups for the unhoused, like Vocal New York, Coalition for Homelessness, and housing activists around this issue. And I would want to approach this with a holistic solution that includes workforce development, job training, mental health services, harm reduction, and drug addiction treatment. And in terms of affordable housing, that is something working class community members in our community are struggling with. They're struggling with housing, right? Mm-hmm. This is, we need to make sure we expand community land trust programs, that we invest in permanent housing. And I just want to say that's why Wall Street billionaire real estate developer Trump supporters are attacking me, because I'm the most because I'm not taking any money from real estate developers.
No, I hear what you're saying. I think we saw that on Twitter earlier. So let's go to Mr. Gennaro. What are policies that you support that would actually address homelessness?
Yeah, I think what we have to do is maintain affordable housing and show leadership. And just as a case study, something I did in 2009 when we were bailing out the Mitchell-Lama houses that were going to lose their 50-year tax exemption. It was going to be a crisis in the city if the Mitchell-Lama houses went to market rate. I took that opportunity to take the Electchester houses that had lost their shelter rent exemption 11 years earlier and were going to market rate. I said, like while we're doing the Mitchell-Lama housing, why don't we also do Electchester? And I was told that's not Mitchell-Lama housing and that can't be part of the deal, but I made that happen. And that was a $109 million tax break that I got for Electchester that'll keep it affordable through 2046. So you have to kind of pick your spots, show leadership, and get your colleagues to do things that they don't necessarily want to do, like give you $109 million, in the aftermath of the 2008 fiscal crisis. So
thank you. And we'll go finally to Soma Syed. What are specific policies you support to address homelessness?
Well, firstly, we need to stop putting people in hotels, which is so temporary. We really need to build affordable housing, permanent housing. The ways to do it is to make this as a priority, then close loopholes, developer loopholes, to do equitable rezoning and really invest in the people. And that's what we need to do, invest in the people and make living quarters permanent, not temporary. We shouldn't have hotels going up in every corner and block of our cities just to house individuals temporarily. And that's not the solution. That is destabilizing for the communities. And we invest a lot of money temporarily, but we don't have any long-term solution. And we need to stop that. We need to make housing permanent for everyone and everybody. And we need to make sure the rents are not so high where the people are getting squeezed out.
Thank you.
And now we're gonna quickly just do a couple of rapid fire questions. And just raise your hand if it's a yes, and don't raise it if it's no. Do you support creating more dedicated bus lanes in your district? That's two
I
yeses.
can't hear
If you're
you.
raising your hand, can you raise higher?
I couldn't
I
hear.
couldn't hear
Oh,
anything.
do you
Couldn't hear.
support building dedicated bus lanes in your district? That's all right. We got a couple of yeses. David,
Do you support more bike lanes in the district? Two yeses, okay.
yeses, three yeses. Okay. Do you support? Oh, you're muted, Mr. Gennaro. Do you?
I was trying to say that I support protected bike lanes, like those are the safe ones.
Well, yes, yeah.
From me.
Do you support another homeless shelter in your district?
Pardon?
Another homeless shelter.
Oh, one that I already do support is the one in Briarwood that's run by the Salvation Army, which
Okay.
is for families.
Yeah.
So-
Let's keep it yes or no for now.
Yes or yes or
Oh.
no.
No.
And we're all gonna raise our hands.
Oh,
And here's
sorry.
another one. Do you increase raising the value of housing vouchers that families and individuals in homeless shelters have to rent apartments?
Show of hands. We have all yeses.
Unanimous, yes.
Do you support the comprehensive land use planning legislation introduced by Corey Johnson over, as an approach to land use?
No.
No, all no's. David,
Do you support making open streets permanent?
no yeses.
Oh,
One
no,
yes, two
sorry.
yeses. Do you support reopening indoor dining? Two yeses.
If it's safe, I will not
But
rush.
we have to look at the data to figure out what's happening. We
I
have to
would
make
not
sure
rush
that-
into it.
Right.
So I
Okay, and now these questions we're gonna ask, I'm just gonna go around how my tiles are organized here. This is gonna be a short response, and we're gonna start with Dilip Nath. If you weren't running, who would you vote for?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough one. I don't know.
Okay,
But you know what? Good thing is the ranked choice voting. So the five, I could have voted for five. So I would probably, choose all the five. But I don't know who I would rank. But one thing that I would not encourage
well,
a someone from the
gonna-
past. The reason being because we had a term limit, and I think
okay.
we need to respect the voter will.
So you're saying not Mr. Gennaro, in other words. So let's go, Mr. Gennaro. Who would you vote for if you weren't running?
I vote for Nita. And because my name was mentioned, I will, invoke my ability to respond to, Dilip. I'm following the law, and I'm offering I'm offering my services, and I am and people are allowed to support me. I'm allowed to run, and my constituents are allowed to want me. They're allowed to vote for me, and they should not be, denied that choice. I'm following the law, and all I'm adding is a choice.
Thank you. Deepti
Well-
Sharma, who would you vote for if you weren't running?
If I wasn't running, maybe you.
I don't live in the district, so that's the
All
that's
right,
the
no,
problem. unfortunately.
I think I appreciate Nita Jane's involvement in the community, so maybe Nita. And again, I haven't analyzed who my number two is going to be yet, because I was waiting to kind of figure that out after all of these forums.
Mhm. Okay, even though voting is underway.
Yeah, I haven't voted yet.
Okay, let's go to Mamita Ahmed. If you weren't running, who would you vote for?
I actually voted the other day, and as you all know, I passed ranked choice voting, and for me, it's about policies. And as a renter, it's important that I look at everybody's policies. And I voted for Deepti as my second choice because we were both endorsed by the Jewish vote.
Thank you. Dr. Nita Jane, if not you, who would you vote for?
since it's a ranked choice voting, I would vote for 5 people
Do you want to tell us who those are?
who are on the same page as policies and who can benefit my community.
Who did you put second?
It's a hard question right now.
Where?
I haven't voted, so once I voted, then I will let you know.
Okay. And Soma Syed, if you weren't running, who would you vote for?
You know, it's exciting to have the first ranked choice voting. You have 2 options. You can vote prefer up to 5 people, or just pick one, and you can guess who I voted for. But it's hard for me to answer that, and so I will. I haven't really thought about it.
Okay. I mean, ranked choice voting is underway, so maybe we'll have to check back in and once more and find out. So I asked the same question at another panel, and a few more people responded this time, but I'm gonna keep asking, I guess. Thank you. All right, Summer.
I have a quick yes or no question, and you can raise your hand or just say yes. Will you get vaccinated once you're eligible and vaccinations are available?
Yes,
Yes.
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 I think that's a resounding yes.
I think that was a unanimous yes.
I already got vaccinated, so.
Oh, okay. Congratulations. And then David is going to close out in our last question.
All right, let's close it out. And this could be 2 or 3 words, I guess, depending on how people frame their names here. But start again with Mr. Nath. Who are you voting for mayor?
Well, you know what? I haven't really thought about that. It's wide open, and there are, new candidates are coming. But
that was more than 2 or 3 words. All right, let's go to Deepti Sharma. Who are you voting for mayor?
I do not know. We literally are adding new candidates every day.
Okay. Mamita Ahmed, who are you voting for mayor?
So I'm gonna rely on the who I considered an elder statesman of progressives, the Working Families Party on this, and because it's ranked choice voting, I will be voting for multiple people. Sorry.
Multiple people. Is there one though?
As I mentioned, I'm waiting for the Working Families Party and other progressive allies before, but I am looking at candidates.
Okay, thank you. Jim Gennaro, who will you be voting for?
Don't know.
Soma Syed, who are you voting for?
I don't know. I've been too focused on my own election. I'll figure it out. We have some time.
Dr. Nita Jane, close us out. Who are you voting for mayor?
Right, I will wait for their debates. We have plenty of brilliant candidates, so I don't know.
All right, well, I guess for some of these questions, we're going to have to wait to see who is actually going to run in the primary. And actually, before we go, let's ask that question. Yes or no? If you lose this election, will you be running in the primary in June? Raise your hand if yes.
Yeah, we will.
So everyone. Okay, so I guess we're going to be back here Summer in 5 months with everybody.
Yeah.
So I want to thank the candidates for participating. Summer, thank you for moderating with me. Thank you for Citizens Union. Thank you for my publisher, Mike Nussbaum, the Queen's Eagle. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good event.
So make sure
Okay.
you should sit on the dinner table.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, goodbye to all. Have a peaceful
Okay,
evening.
bye.
See you again after
Bye-bye.
such a long time.